Hi, my name is Guido Schillaci and I'm a Marie Sklodowska-Curie Fellow working at the Biorobotics Institute of Scuola Sant'Anna in Italy. And I'm presenting a joint work with Alejandra Ciria from the National Autonomous University in Mexico City and Bruno Lara from the Autonomous University in Morelos in Mexico. So in this work we discuss about the presumed link between the emotional balance of actions and prediction error dynamics. And we propose an implementation of a self-regulatory mechanism for artificial agents based on the monitoring of such error dynamics. So we consider emotion as a set of evaluating mechanisms that help agents in organizing behavior, regulating goals, and prioritizing actions. So emotion drive the engagement and disengagement in activities, and we stand by the hypothesis that what motivates an engagement in a behavior is not just the final outcome of this activity, but is the satisfaction or the emotional experience that emerges from the patterns and velocity of an outcome over time. So the focus of this work is on learning behaviors and on the engagement in learning behaviors. So here for velocity of an outcome, actually we intend the velocity or the rate of performance improvement, or using other words like the rate of reduction of prediction errors. Different scholars have been supporting the idea that emotional balance of action depends on the expected rate and velocity of reduction of prediction error. And the main proposal is that learning activities that are associated into the general reduction of prediction error over time have positive emotional balance and thus are engaging. And on the contrary, so behaviors that do not bring an improvement in performance over a long time often correlate with negative emotional experience like boredom or frustration, which consequently produces like a disengagement from the current activity and towards a new one. So we find in general these ideas very interesting, and we propose here a learning architecture that regulates goals and behaviors in artificial systems based on the monitoring of such prediction error dynamics. So concretely, this work proposes a learning mechanism that is based on intrinsic motivation. As we know, intrinsic motivation very much relies on prediction error dynamics. And we extend it by proposing a system that performs multi-level monitoring of prediction error dynamics for regulating self-generated goals and behaviors driven by specific prediction error patterns, for modulating exploratory noise, and also for leveraging computational resources. This is in brief the proposed architecture. So we tested in an experiment on learning visual motor coordination for a simulated agricultural robot, which you can see in the small video here. This robot has been developed in a previous project and is characterized by a very simple motor system, so which consists of a two-dimensional actuator that controls the movement of a camera, which is facing top down. And the architecture generates intrinsically motivated goal-directed exploration behaviors and uses the produced sensory motor data for learning in an online fashion the goals and the inverse and forward kinematics of this system. So the architecture is composed by 4 artificial neural networks. So we have a convolutional autoencoder, which you can see in this part of the diagram, which is in charge of reducing the dimensionality of the visual input, which is captured from the camera. And this network in this experiment is pre-trained, so and kept fixed for the entire duration of the experiments. I will show you in the next. Then we have a self-organizing map here, which is updated in an online fashion with the compressed sensory observations whenever they are available. And it is used for unsupervised learning of goals, which are represented here by the positions of the neurons in the future space. So at every iteration, the system selects a goal according to a strategy that I will describe in a moment. And each goal stores a prediction error buffer, which is populated with the prediction errors that the system experiences when trying to reach each specific goal. So in this experiment, prediction error calculation follow like a standard optimal control theory approach. So we use an inverse forward model pair, which you can see here, that are implemented as simple deep neural networks. So the process is that the system selects a goal, feed it into the inverse model, which generates a motor command. A copy of this motor command is fed into the forward model, which predicts the outcome of this action. So we then calculate a prediction error as the difference between the Euclidean difference between the resulting vector and the current observation, and we append the prediction error onto the buffer of the currently selected goal. So after each iteration, so after each of these loops, we update the three models, so the self-organizing map, the inverse and forward model, with the available sensory motor data in an online fashion. I describe now perhaps the most interesting part of this work, which is the multi-level monitoring of prediction error dynamics. So the system monitors two types of errors. So there is, at a higher level, it keeps track of the overall performance of the forward model, which is measured as the mean squared error of the computed on a pre-recorded test dataset. So the system maintains a MSE buffer, so mean squared error buffer, which is populated at a slower frequency compared to the buffers that I showed you in the previous slide. And after each update of this buffer, we compute the linear regression on the stored values to estimate the trend of the overall performance of the system. And in this case, this trend is estimated as the slope of this linear regression. So here comes the first self-regulatory mechanism. So the system leverages the usage of computational resources according to the trend of this overall performance. So whenever there is a general improvement of the performance, or in other words, whenever the system observes a descending trend in the MSE dynamic, so the necessity to track the goal error dynamics is reduced. So therefore the system releases memory resources by decreasing the size of the goal error buffer, which you can see in this part of the diagram. On the contrary, when the overall performance are deteriorating, so the system assigns more resources to compensate this, and does it by increasing the tracking of the goal error dynamics by widening the time window on which errors are monitored. So the second self-regulatory mechanism consists of modulating the exploratory noise which is added to each motor command, which is generated by the architecture. So this is done again by tracking the slope of the linear regression over the mean squared error. So deterioration of the system performance, so detected as an ascending trend of the MSE dynamics, triggers an increase in the exploratory noise. So this produces basically a switch towards an exploratory mode, and thus a disengagement of the system from the current goal. So on the contrary, when there is a general improvement of the performance, so this means a descending trend in the MSE dynamics, then the system reduces the amount of exploratory noise and switches to an exploitative mode, thus maintaining the engagement on the current goal. Finally, we also monitor the prediction error at the goal level. So, and we do that for a regulate goal selection. So we simply compute the linear regression on each of the goal error buffers, and we select the goal time by time according to the by monitoring so by selecting the goal that is associated to the steepest descent in the prediction error dynamics. So we test this framework under different configuration. In particular, we have 8 experiments as described in this table. So we compare the performance of the system varying 3 parameters. So first we vary whether the goal self-organizing map is being updated during the exploration, or whether goals are maintained fixed for the whole duration of the experiment. Second parameter is whether the exploratory noise is modulated according to the strategy I mentioned in the previous slide, or whether it remains fixed for the whole experiment to a very small value. And finally, whether there is a greedy exploration strategy as in standard intrinsic motivation architecture, which consists of sending random motor command from time to time. And the number you see here indicates the probability that the random motor command is sent instead of the one generated by the inverse model. So each of these experiments is run 5 times. Each run consists of 5,000 iterations run on a simulated environment. Models are trained in an online fashion, as I mentioned before, so the self-organizing map, the inverse and forward model. We do use here a pre-trained convolutional autoencoder to compress images. We employ also an episode memory system that replays samples whenever there is an update of the models, and this is done to reduce catastrophic forgetting issues. And finally, we also employ a greedy goal selection strategy in all the experiment, which consists of randomly selecting a goal instead of the one selected by the system with a probability of 1%. I would like to acknowledge also the contribution from the European project OCRI, so Open Clouds for Research Environments, and the Marie Curie Alumni Association in supporting this project, so in providing us the opportunity to run the experiments on the cloud, in particular on accelerated computing resources. So these diagrams show the MSE, so the mean squared error trends over all the experiments, both for the forward model, so you see the diagram on the left, and for the inverse model on the right. And here I would like to highlight only the worst and best result, and I would like to point you for the intermediate results to the paper. So the worst result corresponds to the strategies that did not employ self-regulatory mechanism nor greedy exploration strategies. So this corresponds to the curve marked in red and green here in the plots. And so we observed actually that that there is an increase in the error over time. So this is likely due to the fact that the system gets stuck on a few solutions and overfits, and performance deteriorate even more than those of the initialized models. Adding a greedy exploration strategy, so this is marked by the green marker here, slightly improved the performance, but it seems still to overfit, probably due to the fact that randomly initialized goal stay fixed for the whole run. Here I mark the best results that, on the contrary, so show that employing unsupervised learning of goals and the proposed self-regulatory mechanism result in a good fit of the learning curve. In particular, the blue curve correspond to the configuration of the system where no greedy exploration strategy is employed. And here the decreasing trend of the MSE suggests that no overfit is occurring and that self-regulatory mechanisms actually compensate for the absence of a greedy exploration strategy. Finally, adding on top of this also the greedy exploration strategy presents the best performance as indicated by the purple curve. So it seems that then the proposed self-regulatory mechanisms do improve the performance of standard intrinsic motivation strategies. To conclude, I've discussed here about the importance of prediction error dynamics in learning architecture, and I've shown that monitoring prediction error dynamics at different level of abstraction can allow the implementation of self-regulatory mechanisms, and actually can improve the performance of standard intrinsic motivation strategies. I've discussed about the presumed link between emotional experience or emotional valence of action and specific pattern of prediction error dynamics, and I've presented a self-regulatory mechanism that, inspired on this idea, modulates the engagement or disengagement of the system on goals and activities that are following specific error dynamics. And I've shown actually that this can promote learning. We are currently working on extensions of this system, so these include modulating behaviors according to more precise patterns of prediction error dynamics, so not just the general trends, so by monitoring the slope of the errors. And we believe actually that this could be associated to more complex emotional experiences, like which characterize also the arousal, so the intensity of these experiences. On the implementation side, we are also working in extending the episodic memory and memory consolidation strategies. So we are integrating a more efficient system that is inspired on a recent work, which you see here. In this work, memory elements are valued according to their expected contribution to the learning progress. So again, this is measured as a function of prediction error dynamics. So, and we show in this work that actually you can achieve a better balance between plasticity and stability in a model that is being updated in an online fashion. Thank you very much.